Hi, everyone. Good morning. It's morning for me. Okay, we're ready to go with the endocrine system. Okay, so we have the endocrine system and the nervous system. These two systems, what they do is they control the body. Okay, the endocrine system controls the body through the use of hormones. The nervous system controls the body through the use of electric impulses, right, with neurons. So endocrine. Okay, so let's take a look. Okay, the functions of the endocrine system. Again, we're just scratching at the surface. Description, primary functions of the organs, various hormones, terminology, medical words, drugs, diagnostic lab tests. Okay, so abbreviations. All right, so what is it? The endocrine system is made of glands and hormones. They secrete into the bloodstream. So, for example, you might have heard of your thyroid, or you might have heard of your adrenals. They're glands, so it's a gland. And the definition of a gland is it releases, it secretes stuff, okay? And so they secrete hormones. And what hormones do, I'm just going to take my glasses off because of the glare. What hormones do, they're chemicals. They go straight into the blood and they affect target organs. So the target organs are going to have receptors on the cell membrane that attach to the hormone, and then you're going to get a response. For example, the pituitary gland in our brain, the endocrine system and the nervous system work really closely together, okay? The pituitary gland in our brain releases something called growth hormone. Imagine growth hormone. It's going to go into the blood, it's going to circulate, and then there are target organs, so bones, muscles, and what the way the cells are going to respond is they're going to grow, okay? So the endocrine system is a method of control, okay, using hormones, okay? So this chapter, we're going to go rather quickly, talking about the different organs and the different hormones. And of course, when we get into the medical section, it's going to talk about disorders. Okay, so endocrine glands are the body's main hormone producers. Some other organs produce and release hormones, so the brain, heart, lungs, liver. So endocrine glands aren't the only organs in the body that produce hormones. Other tissues do too. But right now, we're going to focus on the endocrine glands. The skin, thymus, gastrointestinal mucosa, placenta, fat actually releases hormones too. But right now, we're focusing on the endocrine glands. So the pituitary, that's in the brain. The pineal, right, also in the head. Thyroid in the neck. Parathyroid, it's behind those. Pancreas, so right under the stomach. Adrenals are right under the kidneys, and the ovaries and the testes. It really helps to look at a picture. A picture is worth 1,000 words, okay? So when you're learning these, I would really encourage you to look at this picture. So here's the hypothalamus. Here's the pituitary, teeny tiny little gland. So important, releases so many hormones that affect the body. Here's the pineal gland. Pineal gland, that's involved with releasing melatonin. You've probably heard of melatonin. When have you heard of melatonin? Sleep, wake cycles. Hypothalamus, it's funny, because here's the brain, yeah? Here's the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is part of the brain, and it releases chemicals that influence the pituitary gland. And the pituitary gland is a gland, and it releases tons of hormones. So growth hormone, something called adrenocorticotropic hormone, et cetera, et cetera. Here's the thyroid. The thyroid is mainly involved with metabolism. So it has to do with sugar and sugar levels. The thymus right here, that has to do with immunity. If you've heard, remember we talked about T cells and B cells. Here are the adrenal. Okay, adrenal, if you've heard of adrenaline, right? They're going to release adrenaline. Here's the pancreas. The stomach, the stomache, would be right here. The pancreas is right under it, involved in releasing insulin, okay? And so again, that has to do with blood glucose levels. And of course, the ovaries and the testes. The ovaries involved with releasing estrogen, progesterone, when we talk about the female sex hormones, and it has to do with the menstrual cycle, also has to do with ovulation, also has to do with if a woman gets pregnant, so maintaining pregnancy, right? So these ovaries right here, if you're female, releasing those female hormones, the testes, if you're male, releasing the male hormones. So that's going to have to do with making sperm, producing sperm, spermatogenesis. Plus, the major male hormone is testosterone, and you've all heard of that. And so why are men physically, on average, different than women? Bigger bones, bigger muscles, that all has to do with testosterone. So again, this particular picture gives you the traditional endocrine organs, but know that other things, right, brain, heart, lungs, liver, skin, thymus, gastrointestinal mucosa, placenta, they, again, even fat releases hormones too. But we're going to focus on the big guys, okay? So again, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Take a look at it. So, vital function of the endocrine system, production and regulation of chemical substance called hormones. What is a hormone? A hormone is a chemical. And truly, you can think of it as a chemical signal, okay? It's a chemical signaling molecule, okay? And it gets released directly into the blood. It circulates into the blood. And if an organ has the right receptor, the hormone binds and it's going to trigger some kind of response in the target organ, okay? So it says chemical transmitters released in small amounts, very, very small doses, and doesn't take much, transported via the bloodstream to a target organ, okay? Transfer information, instruction from one set of cells to another. People, it's kind of really neat. Your cells are communicating with one another. Again, you're made out of trillions of cells. How do they communicate? Cells can communicate with one another from cell to cell. And then here it's like from one area, let's say the brain, all the way to another area, your bones in your leg, okay? So what are they going to regulate? Growth. The type of control, the method of control is slow. It's kind of a slow process. Think of growth. That takes months. That takes years. Think of the female's reproductive cycle. That's a month every cycle. So the endocrine system, how is it different than the nervous? The nervous is instantaneous. Think about reflexes. They're instantaneous. That's under the control of the nervous system, okay? So regulate growth, development, mood, tissue function, homeostasis, metabolism, sexual function in males and females. So here is this table that shows the major endocrine gland and the major functions, okay? Pituitary, master gland. It's tiny, it's like a pea, right? Has regulatory effects on others. So there's the anterior lobe, there's the posterior lobe. So the posterior lobe, right? Actually, let's just do the anterior. Anterior influences growth, sexual development, thyroid function, adrenocortical function, regulates skin pigmentation. Posterior stimulates reabsorption of water, so it's going to affect the kidneys because the kidneys are involved with holding on to water, releasing water. Also stimulates uterus to contract, oxytocin. If you've ever heard of oxytocin, or you might have heard of pitocin. Pitocin is a manufactured form of oxytocin, and our body releases oxytocin during labor and contraction, right? Also, has to do with when a mom makes milk. And then another hormone called prolactin stimulates the release of milk during sucking. Pineal gland helps regulate gonadotropin, controls body pigmentation. Thyroid plays a role in metabolism, body metabolic processes. Parathyroid, that's behind the thyroid. It has to do with calcium levels. Pancreas has to do with blood glucose levels. Adrenals, yes, we hear about adrenaline, noradrenaline, or epinephrine, norepinephrine. Regulates carbohydrate metabolism, anti-inflammatory, water balance, development of male characteristics. If you've ever heard of androgens, Okay. Synthesized, secretes, stores catecholamines. Okay. Dopamine, epinephrine, norepinephrine. Epinephrine, norepinephrine, that gets the body going. Okay. So getting the body for action, right? If all of a sudden, it's Halloween time and someone scares you, right? Epinephrine, that's what you're releasing. Or when you go on a roller coaster, epinephrine, okay? Dopamine, this chemical is the feel-good chemical. That's what you release, let's say, when you're in love, or oxytocin also. But dopamine is the feel-good chemical, and that's what a lot of drugs work on, right? Releasing more dopamine. So then the ovaries promote growth, development, maintenance of female sex organs. Testes promote growth, development of male sex organs. All right. So hyposecretion, hypersecretion of specific hormones that are caused by, okay. So when someone has a pathological condition, right? So when someone has a disease, they might be secreting too many hormones, or they might not be secreting enough. So hyposecretion would be not enough. Hyper would be too much. Controlling the production of replacing specific hormones can treat many hormonal disorders. So it's really neat that, we can check blood, right? They can do a blood test. They know what the normal levels of hormones should be in the blood. And if someone is too high, they can help regulate it. If someone's too low, they can help regulate. So hypothalamus, really important part of the brain, primary link between endocrine and nervous system. Please highlight that. That's a biggie, because the hypothalamus controls the pituitary. So endocrine, nerve cells control the pituitary gland by producing chemicals that either stimulate or suppress hormone secretion. Exerts direct nervous control over the anterior pituitary. It controls the secretion of hormones, epinephrine and norepinephrine. And that's why if you're driving your car and you almost get hit, you have a quick response, right? Because the nervous system is controlling the endocrine system, and you can have a quick response there. So here, this table, there's a lot to look at. This table shows the gland, the hormone, and the function. So look at the pituitary. Again, this little pea-sized little organ releases growth hormone, just like it says, growth promotes growth, bones, muscles, organs. So for example, if a child has too much growth hormone, they could get too big. We have gigantism. If a child doesn't release enough, they don't get that big, right? There's something called pituitary dwarfism. So that's talking about like the disorders. Adrenocorticotropic hormone, growth, development of adrenal cortex, so affecting the adrenal glands, which is another endocrine gland. Thyroid stimulating, affecting the thyroid gland. Follicle stimulating, affecting the ovaries and the testes. So here you have this master gland in the brain that releases hormones that are affecting other endocrine glands. Okay, here's again the anterior lobe. Luteinizing hormone that has to do with egg and sperm production, yeah. Prolactin, lactose, think of milk, right? Stimulates the mammary glands, making milk, right? Melanocyte stimulating, regulates skin pigmentation, promote deposit of melanin in the skin, right? Melanin, that's what gives us our skin color. Posterior pituitary, antidiuretic. If you think of diuretics, you're thinking about urinating or not urinating. So the target organ is going to be the kidneys, right? Renal tubules, that's the kidneys. Oxytocin, okay, that has to do with releasing the milk, secreting the milk. Stimulates the uterus during labor, delivery, parturition, stimulates release of milk. Now, pineal has to do with melatonin and serotonin. Melatonin, gonadotropin, okay, body's internal clock, right? That has to do with the sleep-wake cycles. Serotonin, smooth muscle, inhibit gastric secretion, so it has to do with digestion. Thyroid gland, thyroxine, this is a biggie. Just think metabolism, okay? Has to do with metabolic function, okay? How do we break stuff down? It says maintains, regulates basal metabolic rate, influence growth development, mental, physical, metabolism, fats, proteins, carbohydrates, water. Yeah. All right, we're going to stop here, and then we're going to continue in a little bit.